Some detectives rely on force. One relied on appearing to have absolutely no idea what he was doing. For over 2 decades, a disheveled man in a worn raincoat turned television's most calculating criminals into nervous wrecks. Armed with nothing but questions, a wandering stare, and an uncanny ability to seem utterly harmless, Columbo changed what a crime show could be. Behind those episodes lie casting accidents, creative battles, and production stories strange enough to rival the cases themselves. It all began with something the wardrobe department never planned for. Number 1, the coat was never a costume. That iconic wrinkled raincoat, the one that made every wealthy suspect instinctively underestimate its wearer, was never designed by a costume department. It belonged to Peter Falk personally. He had purchased it years before production began, and when it came time to develop the look of the character, he simply put it on. The wardrobe team had essentially no say in the matter. What makes this detail so remarkable is how perfectly it worked. A carefully designed costume might have looked too deliberate, too theatrical. Instead, the coat carried real-world wear, creases earned over time, a lived-in quality no costume designer could convincingly fake. It immediately told viewers everything they needed to know. This was not a man concerned with appearances, and that was precisely the point. Suspects at lavish estates and luxury offices saw a man who looked lost in his own clothing and drew exactly the wrong conclusions. The coat wasn't just wardrobe, it was the first layer of a disguise concealing one of television's sharpest minds. What appeared to be carelessness was, in every sense, the character's greatest weapon. Number 3, one more thing was effects. There are lines in television history so perfectly timed they feel inevitable, as if no other words could have possibly worked. Yet Columbo's most famous catchphrase wasn't born from inspiration, it was born from a problem. Writers found themselves in a recurring bind. A scene had reached its natural conclusion, but the story needed one final beat without the cost of a full rewrite. The solution was deceptively simple. Columbo would turn to leave, giving the suspect a moment of relief, then pause and deliver one last seemingly innocent question. That single line reset the entire dynamic of the scene. The suspect, already relaxing, was caught completely off guard, often revealing far more than they intended. What began as a technical shortcut became the show's most psychologically loaded moment. The pause before the line was just as important as the words themselves. It gave the killer a breath of false confidence before pulling the rug out. A practical fix for overworked writers quietly evolved into the defining weapon of one of television's most beloved detectives. Number 3, you see the killer right away. Most crime dramas build toward a revelation. This show dismantled that idea entirely. From its earliest episodes, the series openly showed viewers exactly who committed the crime and precisely how they did it, before the detective ever appeared on screen. This structure, known in the industry as a how catch 'em, flipped the traditional mystery format on its head. The effect on the viewer is subtle but powerful. Instead of asking who did it, the audience spends the entire episode asking, how will he figure it out? Every nervous glance from the killer, every seemingly casual question from Columbo carries a different kind of tension, one built on dramatic irony rather than surprise. The viewer knows the truth. Columbo is working toward it. Watching those two paths converge is what drives the suspense. This format also had an unexpected side effect. It made the audience complicit. Viewers found themselves watching from the killer's perspective, feeling the slow creep of dread as Columbo inched closer. A show that could have felt repetitive instead felt intimate, because the tension didn't come from the plot, it came from the psychology playing out in every single conversation. Number 4, Falk personally picked the car. A battered, smoke-belching Peugeot 403 convertible is not the vehicle most people would associate with a sharp detective. Yet that was exactly the point. The car wasn't selected by a props department or a studio executive. It was hand-picked by Peter Falk himself, who understood instinctively what the choice communicated before a single line of dialogue was spoken. The car served the same function as the raincoat. Anyone watching an unkempt man climb out of a barely functioning vehicle at the scene of a sophisticated crime would make the same assumption: this person poses no threat. That assumption, encouraged, cultivated, and weaponized, was the foundation of the entire character. Columbo's apparent incompetence was his most carefully constructed illusion. There's also something worth noting about persistence. The Peugeot kept running despite looking like it shouldn't. It appeared out of nowhere at inconvenient moments for the people who least wanted to see it. In that sense, the car wasn't just a prop, it was a mirror of its driver. Unremarkable on the surface, impossible to shake once it had you in its sights. Number 5. The dog was a clever compromise. Network executives in the early 1970s were deeply uncomfortable with one thing about Columbo: he worked alone. The industry wisdom of the era insisted that detectives needed partners, someone to exchange information with, someone to drive the plot forward through dialogue. Producers were pressured repeatedly to introduce a human sidekick who could share scenes and carry storylines. The creative team had other ideas. Rather than fight the demand outright, they offered something the network hadn't considered: a dog. Not an energetic, scene-stealing companion, but a slow, heavy-eyed basset hound that did very little and seemed vaguely confused about where it was at all times. The dog diffused tension without redirecting focus, and it gave Columbo a soft quality that made him even less threatening to the people he was quietly investigating. What the network wanted was a foil. What they got was a prop with a heartbeat, and it worked better than anyone expected. The dog became part of the character's texture without ever overshadowing it. Sometimes the best way to win a creative argument is to technically agree while delivering something entirely different.